Ladies and gentlemen, you may not believe that it is true, but it is indeed the 17th of March, and this is Day 9 Daily number 271, where you and I together, we learn to be a better gamer. That is right. In today's Daily, our favorite Protoss Canadian, Huck, is the enemy today. Oh my gosh, what do I mean? Well, Huck is actually adorable. As a matter of fact, he was a special prize that came out of a cereal box of Fruit Loops. He was wrapped up in a little package, and I was just shaking out the cereal, and then out came Huck. And I was like, oh my god, I pulled him out, and he became the best Protoss in the world, really. And after that moment, we've been doing a lot of featuring of Huck on the show, lauding his play, talking about how awesome he is. And in today's Daily, it's less going to be like, hurt Huck sucks, right? We don't want to do that because he doesn't. I just want to establish in your mind that he's awesome. But just for a change, we're going to have him be on the other side. Oh, we're going to be focusing on TSLAlive's play against the Huck No Toad. Good. I'm trying to think if there are any announcements to be made. Of course there are. Fun Day Monday is going to be Team Mono Battles. You will play a 3v3 or 4v4 where all the players on your team will publicly announce the one unit that he or she will be making all game long. So the goal of the Team Mono Battle is to decide what combo of units you want to be going into. You can do something like Hellion Thor, or you can do something like Baneling Ghost Infestor Battlecruiser. I don't care. Just make it awesome and submit it to Monday at day9.tv. In addition, Newbie Tuesday this week, I want you to incorporate some Speed Reapers into your play. I want you to make at least 5 Speed Reapers in the course of the game. Either have an opening that's Speed Reaper based, or use Speed Reapers in the mid-game. I just want you to experiment, and I want to see your attempts to experiment. And we'll talk a little bit about what goes right and wrong with experimentationating. I feel like there's something else noteworthy going on. I don't think that is true. Actually, I really sincerely think I'm missing something significant. Whatever. It's only probably like some person who's like, oh my gosh, please, you need to talk about this thing in your daily, or else all the opportunities will be passed forever and all time. Oh my gosh. But that's fine. He'll just have to do it later. Now, first of all, I want to note, look at this. I was doing some testing and forgot to turn my health bars back to normal. Oh, that's actually what I wanted to talk about. Oh! On Sunday's Daily, it's actually going to be me trying to rework and resort out a build. I'm trying to figure out some anti-4 Warp Gate style strategy that just seems to feel nice. So I'm going to just be testing some openings and seeing how they feel and trying to work kinks out. It'll be a good example of how to work kinks out of a build regardless of what the opponent is doing. It's going to be my attempt to try to unkinkify my play. I don't like doing anything kinky in StarCraft 2. Derp, derp, derp. So here we have Liquid Huck in the bottom left corner. We have TSLAlive in the top right corner. We're going to watch him duke it out in Xel'Naga Caverns. But before we do, I want to visualize. I want to make believe. One of our favorite things to do on the Day 9 Daily. Alright, cool. I want you to pretend that you hate the way a certain matchup feels. Let's, for instance, say that it is Terran versus Protoss. And you're like, oh, God. I always beat Zergs and Terrans, but I hate playing against Protosses, and you're sad and nothing works right for you. So what do? You begin the quest to find something to steal. You either look on the forums for a build order, you begin combing through replay sites for your favorite players ever, and let's say you see that Huck is playing one of these games, and here comes a spoiler for the day, Huck loses this game. And you see that, and you go, whoa. I don't know who this TSLAlive guy is, but if he can beat Huck, he must be doing something right. I want to steal his play. Let us suppose that is the position you are in. This is what I want you to do when you're trying to steal games. I want you to give a quick run-through of exactly what's going on. There's some good luck, have funs. We're obviously going at somewhat of a warp speed. Alright, good. It looks like we have all the associated things getting constructed. We do see the assimilators going down. We do experience some lag. But everything's going to be fine in the end. There's some rat-tat-tatting. Would my computer quit lagging? Would it really stop? Stop. Stop. Cut it out! Ugh. It's a little bit painful. Coming back, looking good. Alright, cool. So we are now seeing that there is in fact a cybernetics core getting built. There's the second gas geyser going down. Alright, Huck's doing something that looks pretty normal. Would my computer quit hiccuping? It's gonna hiccup because apparently loading a 70 kilobyte replay. Oh, looks like TSLAlive actually doing something a little bit interesting on the early expand front. When it loads. Nope, not gonna quit loading. That's fine. It's good. I'm actually going through the tree. So interestingly, the warp gate looks like shut down hard. And by getting shut down hard, I mean, is my computer going to detonate or what? What on earth is happening? It's not even running at max CPU usage. Computer brown down. Looks like we are seeing Huck get a little bit denied here. I'm going to go ahead and not do it at ×8 because times anything else seems to make it explode. So in this game, it does look like we see our Terran buddy doing some sort of early expand. Again, it looks like he is the player we want to be stealing some stuff from. Looks like Huck did some sort of 4 warp gate. And we want to just get a general sense of what happens in the game before we really start digging deep. I really would have preferred this to be some sort of ×8-ish thing. But unfortunately, we're just going to chill at ×2, and it will all be good. Okay, it looks like Huck takes an expansion. I'm actually going to turn on this production tab. Ooh, wow, that's actually kind of a nice old fast starport there. That's good. That seems good. Huck doing a pretty decent job putting the pressure on with the 4 gates. This seems a little bit funky to me. Right now what I'm doing in this walkthrough, in this speed through, is I'm trying to establish a set of benchmarks, a set of standards, because you know what if I start going through this game and something really weird happens? I want to watch for that on my second walkthrough. I'm not going to really focus too much in the early stages. Like, for instance, this is a little bit weird. A counterattack by Terran. And you know what? I'm not actually feeling that great about it. Wow, look at Huck's food compared to TSLAlive's food. Huh. So, yeah, I'm starting to feel a little apprehensive. Okay, but I still trust that something good's going to happen because I already do know that TSLAlive is going to end up winning this game. See him picking off pylons. Okay, I'm still looking at the food count. Looks like it might be getting a little bit closer, but I still fear for TSLAlive's life. Load back up, and he's going to hide in, of course, the little nook of the map, which apparently you can't really do. I'm still trying to get a good benchmark. Okay, there's some weirdness going on. We do have some more little small troops moving around. Reminds me a lot of Select. I'm just noting a couple of things, right? The fact that it reminded me of Select is not the hugest deal in the world, but, you know, I'll dish it out anyways. Oh, okay, now he's getting a double reactor. Just doing some usual casual perusal and observing. My computer seems to have stabilized, so I'm going to speed it up. Looks like Huck goes for the eventual Colossus play, not the Colossus rush, but eventually, yes, does get those Colossi, yes, getting an Immortal. We're seeing lots of great movement by TSLAlive, we're seeing Mariners around the map, we're seeing the whole force skewed off to the side. There's a lot of things I'm loving here. Whoa! That's actually weird. Oh, okay, yeah. TSLAlive agreed. Apparently he does not really want a lot of Marines, just wants some. And Huck's going for this expansion. Again, I'm trying to establish just a general sense of what happens because you're going to hear me begin to do some reviewing after this replay about what I saw and what I want to look for. Wow, Gravatic Boosters. That's the Warp Prism Speed upgrade. Interestingly, it looks like TSLAlive is sort of caught up in the food count. I get a little bit nervous because I see that Huck is starting to really get a significant amount of stuff. I mean, hell, they're both maxed. Ooh, I'm starting to really note some fears. And then to delineate our fears, we're going to use MS Paint. So don't you worry. If any of you are thinking, I would never do this, what's the purpose of this? I'm going to show you exactly why and what we're doing. So we're walking through this. We're seeing them moving out here. And there's the scan. Is he actually going to be able to break through that? And looks like, wow, yeah, barely. And then I think shortly hereafter, we're going to see our Terran buddy win, because he's just going to have a huge swell of dem infantry. Micro. I'm pretty much feeling like I've seen enough, but Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Gonna let it play out. Wow. Late expansion by Terran. Ooh, that was a good game. Alright, cool. Let's go ahead and slow this sucker down. Alright, good. So, let's go ahead and do our alt run. No. Oh, let me do it. Let's do some MS Paint. Perfect. Perfect. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, I typed it in wrong. My computer does not want to let it load, but that is fine. We're going to type in MS Paint again. Come on, little computer. There it is. Yeah, that's good. All right. We have MS Paint open. Nah, you know what, for balance sake, I'll come on over here. All right, so what we want to begin doing is we want to begin establishing all the big things that we saw. I'm going to have to sadly cover up my whole head. Oh, how tragic. All right, so I'm going to start creating some divisions in time. Yeah, here we go. You can see me up here furrowing my brows. I'm going to just create some broad divisions. So let's do red. There's the opening that we want to see. There's the opening. Looks a lot like Opa Ring, so I'll fix it to make it a lot more legible. So we want to start really noting all the things that happen in terms of timings. We want to see some. Yeah, what buildings are we getting? What's the usual build order? And we're going to see some responses. Now, these two are pretty integral, the build and the timings. The idea of the build, the real opening that you're doing, what you're going to end up building, this stuff, I'll even highlight it in red. This stuff is kind of like what you choose to do before the game. This is what you kind of choose to do before the game. Like, I'm going to build a barracks and get a reactor first, right? That's what we call the opening. The timings are what you're seeing, what you know your opponent can do based upon what you're doing. Something like, hey, my barracks just finished, so I know his blah just finished. Or, hey, my third barracks just finished, so now that's when his 4 warp gate will have just wrapped up. Something like that. So that's one chunk is what I want to look for, is the opening. Now, if this were a normal game, I would just put something like mid-game, like this, and then I would probably just do some more of this jazz, right? It would just be the same thing all over again. Yeah. However, instead something weird happened. This is something that happened, that he ended up with one of these crazy responses. Where the hell is the regular brush? Yeah, he ended up with one of these crazy responses. So now it's kind of like ends up being this somewhat funky mid-game, where things are a little weird, where he ends up being behind. So I want to study how he defends. I want to study his response as to how he defends. And in particular, there's this broad idea. I'm even going to make it in a different color because it's oh so important. What color shall I choose? Blue. Of econ management. I'm going to write econ, and then I'm going to abbreviate it. All right, this is a really important thing. A really important thing. I'm actually going to remove this mid-game. I'm going to remove this mid-game. Because in a sense, he doesn't actually go to a mid-game. I probably shouldn't use that word. There's this crisis moment. Now, this econ management is a really important thing to note. This is really, really freaking important because when you get thrown off your build, right? When you look at your little list and you're like, on 22, I'm supposed to make a barracks. On 34, that's when I start my factory. But at 30, he almost killed you. You can't be like, oh, I better get to 34 so I can build my factory. There needs to be some other overarching guiding principles to that. So, for instance, you'll see a Zerg player only use 2 geysers when he's under a lot of pressure. Sometimes you see this happen. We're going to look at some examples of how he ends up doing this. So, whoops, wrong thing. I don't want to look at the game yet. I want to look at MS Paint. So let's come back to me. MS Paint. Good. So then, after he ends up defending, I want to study his mid-game. In particular, I want to look at what buildings he has. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and put that in blue as well, because that's the other most important part of the whole game. Buildings. Good. And then I also want to look at just the idea of like his tactics. Perhaps some sort of how he comes back, because we saw our Terran buddy really trying to come back. We saw him really try to he kind of had to battle hard. And then the end game, there's usual stuff that I'm looking for in the end game, which would be how he manages battles. Some other buildings that he gets. Notice that this buildings in the end game is not blue. This mid game building is like so freaking important. What structures he has. This is kind of like meh. No one really cares as much about that. But I want to see how he manages the big battles, how he builds stuff, and then some more just general movements and tactics. So now that I've done this, I'm going to pull out my thick black brush. Ooh, we can even change the size. Yeah, we can do. Alright, cool. So let's begin with the opening here. This is the chart that I'm going to refer to. So you'll notice that this is not actually that complicated. I mean, we breezed through the game, and I can actually tell you the huge things I picked up on were, hey, that was kind of a weird build. And then, whoa, he's way behind. How does he come back? And then, whoa, he managed to win that big battle at the end. That's about it. Sure, what I need in there is I absolutely need to have some consideration for the opening and the mid-game. Those are big, but because I saw the replay first, I got to create this extra little consideration here of this crisis management, and in particular how he ends up managing his frickin' econ. So let's begin with the opening. Oh, thank you, Ryan. Thank you. Bam. Coming back to the TSLAlive cam. Coming back to the Alive cam. Ba-dum-ba-ba-bum. Alright, so let's study this quite closely. Studying. I'm leaned in. I have rapt attention. There is a supply depot going down on 10. Good. What else do I see? Looks like he's building a barracks. I actually would like control of the screen, TSLAlive. Thank you very much. He gets a little bit late of a refinery. Alright, he sees some interesting things. Now, for any of you who don't do this, you should. We watched Huck. In the previous game, we watched Huck do something entirely normal in the opening. He went pylon, gate, gas, pylon, cybernetics core, gas. Very, very typical. But you know what? Right when my barracks finishes, Huck's gateway finishes. That's a timing that you should know. That is really a timing that you should know. Right when my barracks finishes, that's when his gateway finishes. So by the way, if you have a scouting SCV and you get there and his gateway's done and your barracks is like half done, you know he got a really early gateway and you need to be worried. Easy peasy timings. This is what we want to do when we're studying a game. We want to be like TSLAlive. We want to make sure not just that we snag his builds, but that we can also snag his timings.
Our SCVs
are under attack. Nothing particularly noteworthy at this moment. Does look like he's just going to repel this probe. He might cancel this and get a reactor. Okay, cool. Now, if you watch this game at ×4, which is what a lot of people normally do, they normally just shoot right through, they might not pick up on the fact that, hey, TSLAlive was trying to hide the fact that he was getting this reactor. And look at how aggressively he does it. He's actually moving out with this Marine to try to catch the probe off guard. Trying to surround right here. He's moving up to this next watchtower. Whoa. Continuing to mine gas. That seems important to me. Part of me maybe feels like he could pull guys out of gas. Put up the production. Alright, we're going to continue going. Now, not me. I want to look at Notepad. There we go. So we're in the opening right now. We are currently looking at his build. And anytime you are building anything, and anything important finishes or starts, figure out a timing of what your opponent is doing. For instance, what happens when our reactor's done? The build order would be create the reactor right when your first Marine finishes.
Complete.
Timings would be something like right when your reactor's done. That's when his first Stalker is almost done. That's right, when his first Stalker is almost done. Doesn't really look like anything else that noteworthy. It looks like Warp Gate is just finished. Oh yeah, any chrono boosted. So a lot of people will ask me this question. A lot of people say, well, what if he went for something different? What if he like made a Robo Bay right when his Cybernetics core finished? So he couldn't even have started a Stalker. I don't know he's building a Stalker. If he is building a Stalker, I know he's ending up finishing it, but I don't know if he's building a Stalker. This is how I want you to word a lot of your timings. The earliest I need to worry about a Stalker coming is long after my reactor's done. Because hell, if he chrono boosts a Stalker, the earliest that this is going to finish is right when my reactor's done. So that timing which leads you to conclude that you don't need to build a bunker at all for defense. There's no reason whatsoever to build a bunker. So it looks like we're making 2 Marines. It looks like we're getting more supply depots. Here comes some more build stealing importantness. Let's watch this through at ×2 really fast. Okay, he's repelling. Okay, alright, cool. This is a mistake that you will make. A mistake that you can very easily make. Where you say, okay, yeah, I see he gets a reactor and then a command center and 2 more barracks. There's a very subtle step that happened in here that's easy to mess up. Now, watch the money with me. Watch the money with me. If you just say, all right, barracks with a reactor, and then a command center, and then 2 more barracks. Right now, notice that you have 150 minerals. This is, I think, the most common problem with build stealing, is that people try to get everything a little bit too fast. Just a teensy-tiny bit too fast. A little tiny bit too fast. So they'll see this and they'll be like, oh, let me build a barracks. But then they won't have enough money for Marines. Look at this. He builds 2 Marines. And when he did that, I immediately thought to myself, like I personally, day 9, said, okay, and now he's going to build a barracks when he has enough money. No. He's actually going to build a supply depot first. So we've been teetering around 150 for, maybe 10 seconds. But no, TSLAlive doesn't succumb to that. He is simply going to continue to make Marines, depots, adding mules. It looks like he's going to save up for a little bit. Notice how different this is than saying 2 barracks on 25. If you just said 2 barracks on 25, you would have completely overlooked building this supply depot. Yeah, unless you went supply depot really early on. But I want to steer you away from this. I build this at this time, and that at that 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 time, and base it all on this number. I don't want you to base it up on this 25 or 27. I want you to base it more on relative things like, yeah, constant Marine production.
Go, go!
Always favor building the Marines first. And hey, remember our magical other timing that we noted? We really didn't need to worry about the Stalker. That's about the earliest we needed to worry about it. Cool. Looks like we were right. So I'm starting to get some other good senses of what's up. Now I want you to look at this production tab quite closely. Right now we see a warp gate finished. Right, okay, so let's do it relative to us. When that command center is getting close to being done, what can we say? Really got to start worrying about warp gate. This actually makes me feel like with your first set of 5 Marines, you can be way aggressive. You can be moving out in the middle of the map, controlling those watchtowers. And as this is getting close to done, that's when you really need to begin pulling back. Not any sooner. Because now we see that warp gate is done for Huck. In the everyone can. Look, there's his warp gates being done right now. And there's the warp in. So as a matter of fact, I think this is a bit of a mistake for our Terran buddy to be moving out right now. Now that this command center is done, that's when I would be more like, yeah, it's time to retreat. But instead he's moving out aggressively. He might want to regroup and be re-aggressive with the 9, but with the initial 5, I think he should pull back with 5. Because again, we're using this timing. Where is our Where's our little thing? So we've focused a lot on this, and we've gotten 2 key timings. I'll actually come over here and temporarily write them. We have the reactor timing. We know that when our reactor's finished, that's when his first stalker comes out. And we have that timing of right when our command center's finishing. That's when we need to worry about warp gate being done. Now I want to talk a little bit about this response idea. This is the idea of, in any good style of play, there's flexibility. I might want to open up with a big Reaper play, but I have to have some pre-planned way of dealing with Void Rays. Because I can't just be like, oh gosh darn, there's Void Rays there. Maybe I better keep making Reapers, you know. Winging solutions is suboptimal. So I want to look at some sort of response. Sometimes there are responses, sometimes there are not. For instance, it looks like these 2 tech labs were going to be built no matter what. So I'm not really going to read too much into it. I'm not really going to get too overly obsessive about any sort of response. It looks like the bunker and orbital command on the high ground, I would pump under the response category. There he is shooting at all the units that he can, but again, I kind of dislike that he lost that much stuff early on. In terms of the unit loss tab, yeah, that's not so good. Does look like he's getting stim and the concussive shell. You know, so for this is something important to note. If you watch, so in order in terms of your development as a person, once upon a time you're a young player and you want to learn to copy these builds, and you start copying them really, really, really exactly, and you begin running into a lot of troubles. And then as you begin getting better, you start to say, okay, I watched him do this build, and that's what he did, but this was a conditional thing. Again, it was a response. So you start to look for this as a response, and that as a response. But interestingly, there's this problem that I don't want you to fall into, where you read way too far into things. Like, way too far into things. As a student at the USC film school, I mean, we're part of the film school, but I'm in the interactive media division. But a lot of film students have a real big problem where they just read into movies like so hard. They go, okay, I do believe that red on the left sleeve of the shirt symbolizes inescapable evil. I saw it 3 times for 5 seconds each, but I really think the evidence is overwhelming. You're just like, you know, like I don't want you to be one of those people, right? So it's very easy to begin to overlook some obvious things, like TSLAlive is probably just going straight down this path. He is pretty much going straight. I can't see any situation in which he wouldn't get both of these upgrades right off the bat. Period. The only one response I would really note is the bunker. So maybe he would not need to build this bunker and could maybe build an engineering bay. What I wouldn't want you to do is to go, oh yes, he's building the stim because he's about to die, or oh, he's building the combat or the concussive shells because he's about to die. If I'm against a 4 warp gate, I'll get that. But if I'm not, I will definitely not get that. A lot of times, it being inflexible, leaning towards that being a little bit stubborn can be good. So in terms of the response thing, I brought this up, but as it turns out, nothing really noteworthy in the basic response. Don't want to be looking at me right now. Nothing too noteworthy there in terms of the basic stuff. But we are going to begin to see a couple of changes go on. Looks like, wow, yeah, he's building SCVs 2 at a time, building out each of these 2 at a time. And, under a little bit of pressure, he's going to be able to hold off. He's actually going to be okay. Factory going down. Is he still building 2 SCVs at a time? Looks like no, but he's trying to not die really fast here. He's trying to do his best to just avoid the dying. There's the target firing on the things that take more damage. There's the concussive shell popping out. A little bit of queuing going on, but you know what? At this point, things seem pretty good. Oh, here's something that can happen in the heat of battle. Missing when key structures occur. We can easily back this up a touch. It looks like he starts his factory and his refinery at the same time. I like that kind of thinking. I like that in a man. Moving things right along, So now, actually, I do believe we're going to begin to see some crises, or we're going to begin to see some responses, right? So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to uncross out this stuff. Because you notice there's this obvious arrow from here to here, where we start to get into a huge problem mode, where we really cannot get our expansion up. For a time being, there's not going to be any change. I mean, for a time being, we wanted to get stim, we wanted to get the concussive shell. This is some good stuff. Alright, so I would write down in my little book, willingness to pull SCVs.
It's go time.
You can see more of these guys coming down. I would even be willing to note like 7 SCVs, not that many. And wow, getting really bold. Huh. This is something. This is actually something I did not pick up on my initial run-through, but is really sticking out now. The fact that I breezed through it first, and now I'm watching it really slowly now, this is actually super important. I always recommend the first run-through here. This feels like he can't get away with it. If I go to the unit station, yeah, that's actually Huck's entire army. So yeah, this is actually a good little move out. Like 2 seconds ago, I was actually feeling quite a bit like Terran was kind of screwed. Like when Terran pulled all these SCVs down, I was kind of thinking to myself, yeah, wow, Terran was actually under the gun. He was actually doomed. He almost lost. Apparently, that is completely dead wrong. Apparently, that feeling that I have internalized is not a correct feeling. So the instant I hold that off, I should be more willing to move out. Look at how quickly he kills that. Will he get another one? Oh! It does look like he's losing a couple SCVs, but interesting. And right as he moves out, he begins getting this combat shield. Huh. So this is something that I would put under this crisis management. Willingness to move out with a couple of SCVs. Willingness to move out. I would put this a little bit under this defense. He is going to be moving out with some SCVs. Not as an attempt to... Gosh, I keep clicking on me. I am so sorry. Not so much as an attempt to... do some huge counter pressure, but to pick this pylon off. This is kind of a defensive maneuver. And of course, when our factory ends up finishing, we'll be throwing down a starport as we can afford it.
Armed and ready.
Now, what you're going to begin seeing in a moment here is this essential idea of managing an economy, right? We're bringing more SCVs down. I'm starting to see a general theme of I don't want to hang out at the top of my ramp. I want to hang out at the bottom of my ramp, and I'm willing to sack a lot of SCVs to do so. That seems important. I would have not done that if I were in TSLAlive's shoes, but next time I am in his shoes, I'm going to do it. I am going to be just like you, TSLAlive. And there we see another force field. Some good old force field action going down. The SCV is getting murdered. Here comes some more essential economy management. Essential economy stuff. Is he making SCVs out of both orbital commands or out of neither orbital command? It looks like neither right now. Look up here. We're also going to see something little. He does not get a reactor add-on on the factory. Very common mistake that your average bear does. And I want you to be an above-average bear. A very common mistake that the average bear does is to overkill something. Like, way overkill. The example that still so many people do that it makes me want to just punch myself. It is that I'm on one base, and then I expand, and I say, I don't have enough gas. So I build 2 geysers in my expansion. So now I have 4 geysers total. A lot of times, you cannot use the gas out of that 4th geyser. So often, you will see pros have 3 geysers. 2 in the main, 1 at the expansion. Because they really kind of need more minerals right then. They need more gas, but just a little bit more. Just a little teensy bit more. Here's the overkill example for Terran. Terran wants medevacs. Well, I better auto get this reactor. Well, no, you can't even afford to do that. So here's, again, this essential idea of econ management. Economy does not just mean... Gosh, I keep clicking on myself. I hate that. It does not mean, do I have enough money? It does not mean, am I spending enough money? Those are just pieces of it. It is, do I have too many structures that are idle? Do I have not enough structures? And that includes this reactor business. This is, I think, some important laws that you can use to govern your play. We do see Huck moving out again. We see some retreating action. But we see one medevac getting produced. Not a lot of medevacs. And this counterattack is kind of funky. This is a little bit unusual. This I'm still labeling under this crisis. And as part of our ability to stay alive, we're going to be moving out here. We're going to be moving out here to do some sort of counter. And this seems like a very early stim to me. It looks like we're going to run up. We're going to kill off some stuff on our stim. So I would internalize this as counterattacking is a reasonable option very early in the game, especially against the gatewaying player. And when I do counterattack, I should opt to kill pylons above and beyond all. I don't necessarily know if this was a good or a bad idea, but if I'm really trying to be like TSLAlive, that's how I'm going to try to say it. Seems like this counterattack at the very least bought him some time. And oh, looks like he's beginning to do some medevac pressure as well. Yeah, you know what? I can actually begin to finally say all these actions as one consistent theme. He does not really want to be on the defensive. He was moving out with tons of SCVs in this area, trying to push back to kill this off. Then he did the counterattack, and now he's just doing a drop. And I will even state that this is some cautious dropping. He just sees buildings, and he's going to go for the buildings. Pylons are an okay thing to begin to attack. We're seeing a reactor go down, but not a quick reactor. He is not ninja-ing to the reactor as fast as he can. Some more pylon-y business. Looks like he might try to pick off some probes, but it looks like buildings are going to be his main focus. Trying to pick off those essential sentries that do have oh so much mana. But the usual general production stuff. Wow, looks like he is super freaking mined out. Again, this is not something I really picked up on as much in the previous game. I did not. At the end of this game, I'm actually going to go through one more time and do some timings, because timings are probably my favorite thing in the whole wide world. And there is the many O'Muling going down. Huh, this is actually very interesting to me. Notice how, right off the get-go, aggressive TSLAlive is being. He's being really aggressive. I mean, he got 4 warp gate. The instant units stopped being at his front door, like, they were actually a little ways down the street. But the instant they were not in his direct vision, TSLAlive was like, alright, let's move out, let's go kill shit. Moved right down the ramp. Counterattacked right after that. Then did a drop at the backside. Now moving out the front side. Very, very, very aggressive. And now begins to come this important moment. So we looked a little bit about these defensive counterattack antics. We looked a little bit at the idea of not overreactoring. We saw no upgrades happening here. We saw some SCVs getting cut. We saw a lot of aggression. And now here comes super important stuff, which is like mid-game tactics. Mid-game tactics. This is very, very, very important. And this is, these things are going to end up tying together a little bit. These tactics kind of letting them pop back in the game. If we look, Huck is still ahead by a little bit. I want to watch that for when he ends up pulling back ahead.
Somebody, get me out of this mess.
Now at this point, I'm poking around because I'm trying to see, are there any new buildings coming up? Any good mid-game relies a lot on the buildings coming up, and there ends up being some typical numbers. For instance, for Huck, I would say it is 5 warp gates, 1 robo getting Colossus. That is what I would say for him. For the Terran, it's generally 5 barracks and 1 starport churning out medevacs. Occasionally 6 barracks. So we see more poking, we see some more harassment type stuff. So the tactics is having all these things be very far forward on the map. A little bit of an overstimming going on. Hey, look at it. There's this mid-game. Is there an engineering bay going on here? You know what? No, I don't really see that. Why no engineering bay? I would say that this is part of this comeback thing. If you're behind, like hardcore, you kind of have one of two mindsets. One is, I'm going to slam him hard now. That's what we're seeing. I cannot afford to begin getting an engineering bay because then I can't be aggressive anymore. I can't get into his face. Also, very similar to what we saw yesterday's daily with Grubby. Grubby, who was going for all these Blink Stalkers, couldn't be like, oh yeah, now I'm going to begin going for Colossi. Because again, you can't really start going for something because it sacrifices your ability to be scary now. So this player, as with Grubby yesterday, TSLAlive is going to try to be scary now. That's why I skipped the engineering bay. That's one of the mindsets you can have. Be scary now. The other one is, alright, well, I'm so screwed, I have to hope to do something incredible later. So, in other words, relating this just back to upgrades. If you're behind like this, you either want to be getting no upgrades or double upgrades, like +1/+1. You generally don't want to be getting just one single upgrade. That's because your mindset is, again, I need to either be scary now or I need to be very strong later on and hope that I can get some sort of crazy money army. Good. Good. Good, good, good. So we're seeing again, it looks like, wow, this Terran player is just being super aggressive. He stimmed everything to kill that probe. Don't do that. Just stim one Marauder. Always stim just a leading Marauder to pick the probe off. And look at this. This is just amazing. I cannot actually emphasize enough how beautiful the last minute's worth of unit movement has been for the Terran player. Oh gosh, how glorious it is. I'm actually going to rewind it a full minute. He swings down here. He still has a Marine over at this side. He's drawing everything far to the right, or excuse me, far to the left. And as he does that, he's going to begin grouping these guys together and joining them over. So he briefly is poking down here. He's going to be certain to swing back around to this Xel'Naga Watchtower. And again, I love that there is this Marine here. This Marine was able to be here because all those units swung down to pick off this one pylon. That helped keep him alive. And there's the Marine. Oh my god, it's a probe. Better stim to try to kill it off. Excelente. Excelente. Yep, and ends up picking it off. Gosh, that was so good. And even having some units there, I would have loved to especially see if there was another guy hanging back there. But look at this great unit movement. Look at this great unit. Bringing the whole army here and then splitting it up. And here even is the Marines swinging around to this side. This is just good, good, good stuff. And again, doing something fairly intuitive. Getting just a lot of Marines and Marauders and add-ons. Good stuff. This is a little excessive, having all these Marines spread out. But look at how aggressive we're seeing our Terran player be. This is something that a lot of Terran players will just not do. Is they can do this. Anyone can do this. Anyone can get a starport with reactor and get a whole bunch of barracks. But not a lot are good at unit movement. Now, what is a mistake that you could make with this backdoor attack? What is a mistake that you could make? I'm actually going to open up the IRC chat. I want you to type a mistake that you could make here. Mistake that you could make. This is very important. This is very important. Cyrogenic21 talking about overcommitting. Yep, people overcommitting. Overcommitting, yeah, all this good stuff. Overextending. That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. More people talking about that. I'm looking for some other things. Not macroing. That's actually, I like that quite a bit more because I love macroing. I want to just briefly note that a lot of comments, when I say, what could possibly go wrong with this, it's about the attack itself. The big thing that I'm thinking is that too often people will watch this daily and they'll go, alright, I want to be like TSLAlive. Box. Go. And the army will wander just like this to here. That's not what this army did. This army was here, and then it dipped in, and then it backed out, and then it dipped in, and then it regrouped, and then it dipped back. There were tons of threats that were going on. The fact that he's attacking here is incidental. For instance, I'm going to redo this one more time. One more time. TSLAlive, he dipped down here to pick off this area, and then he dipped here, And then he pulled back and he dipped into this region, regrouped, and then swung back down to here. This is the incidental place where he ended up being popped. I want you to consider that, you know what, TSLAlive could have, he could have moved here, and then he could have dipped back over to this direction, and then he just very well could have pulled right back to here again. By moving through the middle by these watchtowers, he's clearing out the space. A ton of people are saying counterattacks are an issue. It's not actually that much of an issue. Because Terran has a good sense of where his army is. Has a very good sense of where... Terran has a very good sense of where Protoss' army is. And as we can see, you know what? Protoss, I mean, interestingly, let's back this up a bit. This is something that's very hard to perceive in your usual... if you're just sort of like casually watching. See this whole sweep, and then Protoss begins to move out. And notice that the Protoss is much closer to Protoss' base than the Terran is. Or, excuse me, that Protoss is not very far away from his base. Terran is really far away from his own base. The fact that this army's here, a lot of times it looks like, oh man, missed out on a big opportunity to do a counterattack. No, no, no. Terran was doing an excellent job of just sweeping through the middle and getting a good sense of where the Protoss army was. Now, when Terran kills off this, he can just back right off again. This is honestly a good time to send one Marine forward. Alright, cool. That's what we did see. And oh my goodness, did you just see this and this? These are the two heroes of this attack, right? That Marine that went forward, but then also these other two. This is so strong. Again, the fact that it was this back hallway is kind of incidental. It's the fact that they're sweeping, moving on with the army. Look at this army gearing up to move to the left as this army is on the right side of the map. I would really not mind if this whole force were swung here and this whole force were brought back. This does not need to be one big force. You can very, very comfortably split up Marine Marauder forces. Very, 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 very comfortably. The Terran really has not stayed back at his base this whole game. He has been out and about non-stop. And if we come back to our beautiful MS Paint thing, I want to kind of say, how's his comeback coming along? Well, it looks like he's a little bit behind still. He's a little bit behind, but you know what? He's getting free pylons here and some free pylons here. Let's come back. All right, good. The buildings of the mid-game. It looks like 6 barracks, 4 tech labs, 2 with reactor, and then a reactor starport. No engineering bay anywhere. I would probably chalk that up to this crisis that happens, to this crisis. But I want you to count buildings when you are mimicking. Because again, you're a Terran player. In our make-believe, man, you're a Terran player who's just like, oh no, I can't win Terran versus Protoss. How do I do it? I want you to take exact numbers down. Like, write these exact numbers down. Make sure you're watching someone good. If you have an inspiring Silver League player who has 10,000 minerals in the bank, and you're like, yes, he only has 1 barracks, therefore I will only have 1. Make sure he's playing well, you know. TSLAlive, money's low, things are getting crunk out. Yes. Very, very kick-ass. Very kick-bass. I think I said kick-bass, and I think I'm fine with it. But these tactics, this is actually the hard part. This is the hard part. This, I would say, is the important part, the buildings. You're not going to get anywhere in StarCraft unless you have a good sense of buildings, unless you have a good sense of economy management. Just general techniques like, oh yeah, I have 3 geysers, now I can get a reactor starport, something like that. These two are like the foundations of all StarCraft play. But this is the hard part. This is what sets the top Master Leaguers apart from the Grandmaster Leaguers. Control Y, redo that arrow. Gosh, keep clicking back on me. I just can't help it, but come back. These sorts of tactics and movement techniques are really important. Notice that he regroups and is constantly just popping through the center, bouncing back and forth between these sides. Occasionally you even see a scan go down here. But this Marine here, in range of the destructible rocks, notice that his huge force is always where his smatterings of units are not. Almost certainly, if he is playing well, he will stim a Marine and send it back to this side. Oh, he sees this force here. He's going to end up pulling back. We have some Vikings getting made, just in general. Now, incidentally, notice that these Vikings are getting made right around the time when these Colossi are done. We're actually going to wrap up this whole discussion with a really long timing thing to note. And by really long, it's probably not actually going to be that long. Probably just like 4 or 5 minutes.
Gangway, coming
But I still want us to get all sorts of juicy timings. All sorts of juicy timings. And look, he's just still bouncing back and forth. And look, hey, look, sending a trailing Marine there. Whoopsie daisies. Oh, hey, look, he stumbled across an expansion. He's just going to continue to try to poke and prod. And by virtue of good macro, we see that our Terran buddy has finally caught up to the Protoss. Just all those little pokings and proddings and pressurings delay this expansion by a lot. This expansion was delayed by so much. Holy crap, the expansion was delayed by a ton. And then we see, looks like a Ghost Academy went down somewhere. This again, we would note like, okay, yep, just getting one Ghost Academy right after these buildings get up and after I spend a little bit of time in these buildings. I'm never going to stop making that mistake. You're going to be coming back to me every time I go into MS Paint. I can't fix it. It's in my fingers. It's in my blood. I don't actually know why he's attacking this part. I don't actually know really that much why. This I actually think is a very dangerous move that Terran did. This is really dangerous because it completely abandons the center. Like, absolutely and totally, and Protoss is having a complete and total heyday doing whatever the hell he wants to do. And now we're going to zoom up to the one moment that I would love to see. By the way, I'm noticing that there's no other drops by Terran. I kind of would like to see some more drops. Now the Ghost moving out to the side. How did Terran end up managing this final battle? And once after we're done looking at this final battle,
Our SCVs.
that's when I want to rewind and relook at this game for just a couple more times. We do see that there was an EMP. There's going to be another EMP, indeed. So there's the stim. How does he end up doing this? I rewatched big battles in slow motion a lot. I think the big thing is that he caught a lot of zealots up at the front first. And it looks like he's just being very careful to engage at a huge arc. Yeah, not even the Colossi can really do that much damage. And I think this is kind of funny because a lot of Terran players will engage here through this region. This is where the Terran units will be clustered and they'll get smashed. But just backing up a little teensy bit, I mean, this is just very good play by the Terran players. This is also part of the reason why I'm like, split them into groups. Have Control Group 1 go here, have Control Group 2 go here, have Control Group 3 go down here. And that way you can always be trying to draw Protoss back into this one cup. Because Marauder Viking actually gets smashed by most forces. Marauder Viking is not actually particularly strong against most mixes, unless it's really well spread out. If it's like clustered up like this, then you're in terrible shape when the army sizes are big. When the army sizes are small like this, you're actually going to be A-okay. I'm actually noting that Terran really never got an expansion command center at any point. I think he actually ends up lifting this orbital. Is that true? I'm hoping so. Yep. Wow. Man, Terran was actually having a serious struggle bear time in this matchup. Alright, cool. I'm gonna rewind it back for just some broad timings. The reason I was like, oh, that's some sort of struggle bear mode there for Terran, is that, what was I just talking about? Struggle bear mode. I know the word struggle bear mode came out of my mouth. I was talking about the Terran player. Ah, that's right. When we look back at this crisis part right here, this crisis that occurred, where we responded by really not taking our expansion for a long time, and you heard me talk about these mid-game buildings and how the crisis influenced that. Well, what happened is, in other words, there was no eBay. There was no economy at all. Or excuse me, not no economy. There was no fancy long-term play at all. And as a result, when we advance on to the end game, to these buildings, we saw this trickle-down effect where there was also no money for any expansions. And this is, I think, an important thing to note, the fact that this crisis, the fact that our crisis began where we couldn't get our expansion up and we had to be aggressive, the fact that it carried all the way down here and caused this no engineering bay and caused us no expo. This is this mode that I was talking about beforehand. This mode of, I am about to die. I can either try to stay in the game and be really aggressive and try to keep thinking about the now, which would be building a lot of barracks, or I can think way down the line, which would be like getting defenses and tanks and lots of upgrades and turtling, hoping that I can get a huger, more superior force whenever I do choose to move out, that sort of thing. The crisis does have a big trickle-down effect, so after people get really screwed, you generally see them be very aggressive or very defensive. And that's what we saw sort of carry through this entire game. Let me fill these in because it makes me feel like that's really, really important. So I would actually look back at this Terran player and not so much think to myself, yeah, I'm going to do the no Expo Viking play, because or no Expo, no upgrade Viking Marauder play, because if you're playing against a sufficiently strong defensive player, I mean, really, Terran got a little lucky that Huck elected to engage in that last fight. Terran could have done some more tactical poking around the fringes to maybe get into a good spot, but really, most solid Protosses are going to be in fantastic shape facing that sort of army. So, I want to just briefly blast through some timings really fast. Briefly blast through. So, big lessons I'm learning, ignoring exactly what was built and exactly what was done. If I'm ever feeling behind, I need to take initiative as Terran and be very aggressive about moving out lots. Very aggressive about moving out a lot. We can actually get some general timings here. Just sort of looking at both players. Sort of looking through them. Yeah, when both these barracks finish, that's when Warp Gate's getting done. Yep, same timing as we listed before. Good stuff. And we see an expansion going down. Okay, so here's something I want to say. If you're ever under a ton of pressure with this style of play, if you're ever under a ton of pressure at the start of the game, right around the time you're starting your starport, that's when his expansion's finishing. Why does that timing make sense? Why does that make intuitive sense? Well, if I'm not under pressure at all, then that probably means he's either teching or he's getting some sort of he's probably either teching or expanding or something like that, so I can't use that timing. But if he is being really aggressive and I'm on the verge of dying, there's no way he could have afforded an expansion thrown in there earlier. So Huck got this expansion pretty early. So what does this mean? Hell, if I'm starting my starport, this is right when Protoss has finished his expansion but hasn't quite gotten to make use of his expansion. He's actually a little bit vulnerable. So you know what? Now I'm actually realizing why this is a good time for TSLAlive to attack. This expansion's just finished, and Huck has only hasn't really gotten to do anything with it. He hasn't gotten to build any extra structures. He hasn't gotten to get any extra gateways, do anything much more with it. All right, let's do some other timings. Let's see if we can get some more. We can just do some big, broad timings, and this is where you really want to double-check yourself. With lots of games worth of research. I think everyone would agree with the timing. When my barracks finishes, his gateway finishes. I'm talking at 15 food. I think everyone will agree with that timing that I started the game with. 15 food on the barracks. That's right when my barracks finishes. If I built it at 13, I should be at 15 food then, and his gateway should have just finished. Obvious, clear. People, again, seem to have this idea that timings kind of slip away in the later stages of the game because there's so much craziness going on that I just don't know. You know what I'm seeing right here? I'm actually going to remove this little overlay for a moment. I want you to just think about when this factory gets built. I actually don't think that the starport and friends got delayed too much. Alright, I mean, look at this. There's, look at the money. The money's... Yeah, look, he's getting his factory pretty quickly on. What I'm going to try to argue right now is that the starport really didn't get delayed that much. Yeah, look, there's the starport going down. Looks like it got delayed a little bit. We'll end up seeing a medevac come out right now. You know, maybe we'll end up seeing a reactor. Yeah, you know what? I would probably say something like, if I've been really aggressive, okay, cool. All right, this is what I want to say. If it's been a pretty aggressive game, there's been a lot of moving back and forth with gateway units. If you have somewhere between 2 and 4 medevacs, he probably can't really have Colossi. He probably just can't. I mean, you know what, Huck, like, he went 4 warp gate and then expanded. He had an opening, he expanded, and he's just now been able to do 1 extra building. Yes, you know what, I'm pretty confident he cannot really have that much. Alright, so now when I'm starting to really do some constant double medevac production, that's probably around the time that he's going to be getting Colossi, right when I'm starting to really get in the zone, assuming it's been an aggressive game. You might be thinking, oh, that sounds preposterous. Well, you know what? Go watch like 10 games of you doing this 3 barracks straight into medevac play and start being able to say something really broad, like, normally, when I have 4 medevacs, or normally, right when I finish getting all 6 barracks up and running, that's when he's taking a third. Because if you can start making some general themes in terms of timing, you can get these huge, huge clues. Like, let's say that the following is true. Let's say that the following is true. I'm going to do one more little timing. Hey, you know what? All our barracks are done. Yeah, you know, oh, look at those Colossi coming down. Right when our 6 barracks are done, this is right when a player who opened aggressively is going to begin thinking about a third base. This is right when our buddy's going to begin thinking about a third base. What does this mean? If I scout here, and here, and here, and here, and I don't see a third base? What if in almost all the games I've seen, he should be getting a third base, but for some reason he's not right now? What does that lead you to conclude? Holy shit, time to play defensively, because if he's not devoting any money to expanding, he's devoting all his money into upgrading and having a bigger, scary army and getting down tech paths. I might even immediately invest in another starport, immediately invest in some bunkers, randomly. And this is what makes people look like hackers, is because they're moving around, thinking, now's about time that that guy should have an expansion. And by seeing nothing makes you go, uh-oh, scary attack coming, bunkers going down. So when the player rewatches the replay, he's like, wait a minute, why did you just build a bunch of bunkers all of a sudden? What the hell? I'm going to go ahead and take just a couple of questions. Going to open up Mark Yo's question taker script. Question taker script. That he password protected. I'm not going to read that out loud. Alright, refreshing. We're just going to take 2 to 3 questions. Yes, here we go. Ikus, this dear day 9, I'm having problems with early game unit composition. Let's see here. It is a question about Protoss. Darn, I would have only taken question Terran's. Question from Terran, but I will take this one because I started reading it. I find that making sentries allows me to be safe on 1 base, but vulnerable on 2 base. If I end up with an advantage, I attack, but often I get crushed by slow from Marauders. Can you lend any early mid-game suggestions on how to deal with Marauders with Sentry Zealot Heavy Army? First of all, it says, if I end up with an advantage, I attack. Well, what kind of advantage did you end up with? I generally assume that it means he attacked me and I defended. Right after you've defended an attack, that's when you should expand. Because there's no way he can attack you. You should just expand or tech. Like, I have a lot of builds as Protoss where I'm like, okay, I will open up 3 gateway, then upon expanding, I will get 2 more gateways and a robo. Like, and by the way, I don't do it like immediately. I go like, you know, gate, expand, gate, robo, wait a little while, gate. A lot of times I'll have gate, robo. I'll have 3 gates and a robo, and it'll attack, and I'll crush it, and I'll be like, yes! And then I'll expand, or I'll immediately get a robotics facility for Colossus. And I'll completely skip those other 2 gateways. I feel great. That's something that you should do. Sentries are actually awesome. If you're struggling with sentries on 2 bases, I would generally say it means you don't have enough sentries. 1 sentry can work well on a ramp. 3 sentries can work well if you have a ramp. 3 sentries cannot work so well if you have open space. 9 sentries works great. More reasonably, 6 to 8 sentries will work great. And be liberal with your force fields. Yeah. So that's honestly something that happens a lot, is you feel a little bit too timid with 1 unit. But also, I would say, feel free to just make a couple more Marauders, or excuse me, a couple more Stalkers and Zealots, and de-emphasize the Sentry. Also, make sure you're Guardian Shielding a lot. Let's see here. Here's an interesting question from Johnny Wupp. Day 9, why didn't Alive get his command center to float to his natural for a long time? He was control of the bottom of his ramp, so shouldn't he have been able to defend it? Was it beneficial for him not to get the better econ? I would actually say I want you to go rewatch the game from around this moment and really examine hard as to why he would be doing that. Go to sc2rep.com, sc2rep.com, and it's right there, TSLAlive versus Liquid Huck. And I would say that the answer generally is that he probably was not quite positive that he was safe. He was just not quite certain. And I want you to look for some triggers that could have been going on in his mind. For instance, did he have an opportunity to scout if his opponent had an expansion or not? Like, that's actually a pretty big thing. Let's actually come right here. Terran actually has no idea if Protoss has an Expo or not. If Terran saw that Protoss had an expansion, this sucker should be right there. I want you to look at when this orbital command moved here. I want you to discover this yourself. When did it move? And look for the trigger that TSLAlive saw. Did he see the expansion? Did he see the robo? Did he see both? These sort of thingies. Doing one last question. People are asking a lot of questions about Zerg. Interesting. Guess I'm wearing a Zerg shirt. Pants B says, Dear Day 9, in this game, TSLAlive won largely based on that final battle where he got a great concave. In a way that can't be depended on. How do we separate a victory based on strategy and builds from those that hinged on happenstance, luck, or an opponent's error? Interestingly, I would not say that there was a huge luck involved in this. This is what's really going on. When you have a super mobile army, exactly like what TSLAlive did today, exactly like what Grubby did yesterday in Daily 270, you want to poke and prod and sort of work your way around and then stay put for a battle where you can win. You're waiting for the right spot. What if, for some reason, Terran had all his forces here, and Protoss had all his forces here, and this is where the battle was about to be fought? What you would see is TSLAlive runs away. You just see him run away and run away and run away and run away until he gets in a good spot. When did TSLAlive engage in that final battle? Well, TSLAlive engaged when he was right here and could easily squeeze here and easily squeeze there. TSLAlive, by constantly poking and prodding, waited for Huck to be at a disadvantageous position and then just drilled it hard. And this is actually one of the most mysterious looking things. People will always chalk things up to, oh yeah, if he hadn't engaged in that final battle, oh god, yeah, Huck would have easily won. Would he have? Because you know what would have happened? TSLAlive, let's say it would have been here, and then Protoss would have tried to engage. TSLAlive would have backed up to here and here, and swung around and been picking off here, and then maybe pulled back here, and maybe rearranged here, and then packed everything here to poke a little bit, and then pulled back, and Huck maybe would have gotten frustrated and tried to engage, and then he would have punished. Or Huck would have gotten some units lost off. Or maybe Huck doesn't really make any mistakes for a while, but probes are still being lost, stray units are still being lost. And then this is the way in which Terran can chip his way back in. Because the huge thing that I want you to note is that Terran, we're actually just going to go to the food count right here. Terran fought his way back into the game with poking and prodding and good macro. Look at all the poking going on here. Whoa, looks like he's doing a better job of closing the deficit. Oh, picking off these two things. Look at Huck, supply blocked. Now suddenly the gap. Ooh, oh, it's getting a little teensy bit closer, so there's more poking and prodding. Notice how we see Huck still hasn't quite taken a third yet. Man, it looks like he's starting to pull way ahead. Oh, yeah, look at that. That's nice and juicy. Perrin, by poking and prodding, not any sort of luck, man, just to get his way back in. Yeah, poking and prodding and being aggressive with mobile armies. I'm gonna go have a good time because it's the weekend, kind of. I have to write a thesis. See ya, see ya, see ya.